It's plastered on posters, chanted at conferences, yet lives still hang by a thread. We scream health equities, but disparities are continuing to grow wider and wider. Are we spending more time doing stuff that doesn't matter? Are people in the boardroom more incentivized to protect their jobs? What's the obvious elephant in the room? To know how we can get it right, we have to expose where we are getting it wrong. Time to expose and dissect some of the areas where we can improve in this video. In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about exactly what I think we're getting wrong in the health equity space, and hopefully we can start to turn things around from buzzwords to actually getting stuff done. If you're new here, my name is Malone Mukwendi, and I'm interested in the business of property, the business of healthcare, and the business of changing my life. So let's jump right into it. Research, and more research. This is exactly what the health equity world has been doing for so many years. And I think for me, I find research particularly frustrating because I think a lot of the time people use this as the metric to say we are advancing medicine forward, we are advancing the health equity agenda forward because last year we had this data, next year we're going to get even more data so we can confirm the things that we already know. Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense because it's so unfortunate that I am sitting here in January 2024 and I could probably predict to you about 80 to 90% of the reports that are going to come out in December 2024 and tell you exactly what they're going to say. And the way I'm going to do this is just go through all of the reports for the last 30, 40, 50 years, and you'll notice that the underlying trend largely has been the same. The only thing that changes year on year is we go from 2 times more likely to 3 times to 4 times to back to 2 times, back to 3 times. But the underlying trend is that we are heading in a negative direction. I think we are drowning in knowledge, but the tide of inequity just keeps rising and rising and rising. And in a very weird way, I liken it to something like, let's take Jay-Z, the rapper, for example. Imagine him rapping about having all these stacks of cash but living in a leaky roof. I think in the health equity world, we are kind of doing the same thing. We have all of this knowledge in abundance, but we're not doing anything with the knowledge to be able to seal that leaky roof. And my action plan going forwards for anyone who wants to jump into the health equity space, or if you are watching this and you're already in the health equity spaces, just get to providing solutions. I think it's very easy for us to always turn to a research paper, to always turn to needing more data, when in actuality, a lot of the time we don't actually need more data for us to be able to make the improvements. We all know something like food deserts is a big cause of inequity in the USA. So let's start doing stuff about that instead of saying that, no, we need to get more data onto the impacts of food deserts have on a particular community. And then we keep drilling and getting more niche and niche and niche and niche and niche. In the health equity space, the research is loud and clear. We all know that people from disadvantaged backgrounds are having worsening health outcomes almost year on year. And this is something that we as a community, I don't think we're doing enough. And the reason why I think we as a community are not doing enough is because it's actually scarier for you to be the person who is in the arena. And I think a lot of the time people optimize for doing just about enough, if that makes sense. So if you put out a research paper but then don't do any action, it's like you've just about done enough to say that you've done something. But to take that research paper and put it into action is a lot scarier. And I would encourage everybody who's watching this to almost know that you going out there and you trying something, reality is it's probably not going to work. But when it doesn't work, what it allows you to do is to see what doesn't work. And every single time something doesn't work, you get closer to the things that do work. And I think there is enough research out there. You can just systematic review loads of things just to be able to get the answers to work on things. And you just come up with solution and just be a doer. I think I admire a lot of people who enter the ring and want to be in the arena. I think I look at people who write research year on year as the people who are in the stands of the arena. Now, don't get me wrong, like any battle, like any sports match, the people who are in the stands of the arena are very important. But ultimately, we all come to watch the people who are in the arena. And I think in 2024, choose to be the person that is in the arena. Number 2, and I like to call this the prevention paradox. Now, this is not something which is the fault of the people who are doing health equity work, but this is a wider healthcare system problem. I think in healthcare, what traditional healthcare systems do is they almost patch the leaky roofs without fixing the roof above. So I'll give you an example. I remember spending a placement and I was on the hepatology ward. And for those of you that don't know, a hepatology ward is essentially where people come in with liver issues, so usually due to drinking alcohol. And to me, it never made sense to me why we always come and help people recover from like alcohol abuse, but then we almost discharge them back into the same communities, into the same environment where they got their alcohol issues from. Now, of course, as medical professionals, we can't do everything. We're not life heroes. However, I thought that if anything, it's more effective for us to try and put interventions within their community to maybe stop them drinking, to maybe help them to reduce when they do get home, as opposed to just patching up leaky roofs when the roof above is just rotting. Now, I think the reason why healthcare is like this is because of the business models that exist in healthcare. Like, it's easy to see the revenue stream when you're just patching up leaky roofs, because if there is a problem when we patch it up, that's the revenue stream. Whereas if we fix the roof that's rotting above, we're not going to see the direct return from that for many, many years. And ironically, it is actually a better return on investment from us doing that, because if we are able to fix that roof and get rid of the rotting, theoretically speaking, we shouldn't have any leaking for a very long time. Whereas if the roof continues to rot, the leaking just continues to get worse and worse and worse. However, when the business models that exist today almost incentivize that model, that's why you can see that people don't want to enter the arena sometimes, because it's a continuous cycle of revenue for the healthcare system. Now, I think as we move towards a world where value-based care comes more into practice, I know we are still so far away from this reality, but eventually when we get there, when companies like City Block Health continue to spin out, I think we will start to see more and more that this problem will start to reduce. So if you're somebody who doesn't want to be part of the prevention paradox, I think it's so important that we commit and we invest to the long term. I think it would be very naive of you to come into this space to think that you can create a solution and even think 5 years is a timescale enough, which is why it's even hard when people are entering this space and they're looking for quick returns. I think it shows you that the incentives are completely misaligned from the jump. Health equity work is about investing in the long term. It's about building foundations. It's about building communities. And I think if we can have commitments which are a minimum of 10 years, we will start to see things slowly moving in the right direction. So if you're a big corporate, if you're a startup looking to get into the space, I think it's so important that you look at everything in decades so that you have enough time for that community to be built, for those foundations to be laid, and for the works to be actually done. Planning paralysis. Now, this is something else in the health equity space, which I have seen time and time again. I think we get too obsessed in making plans that never actually come to fruition. I've always been a person that I will admit that my planning abilities are not my greatest strength, but at the same time, the fact that I'm not that great at planning sometimes allows me to move forward quicker. And this is because I think I'm a big believer that most plans are going to fail at first hurdle. Like, 70% of the plan that you make, when you get out there into the real world, you'll realize that actually all of this was theoretical, and we never considered the fact that people are not going to come out of their house in the cold. And I think what happens, especially when I've worked with big corporates, when I've worked with NHS and other health bodies like that, is people want to plan everything to perfection. People want to control for every single variable that's going to come up. And because we are working with disadvantaged communities who often don't have that much trust in the healthcare system, I think when we overplan, we actually just get it wrong, because there are some things that we are going to learn as part of the journey. We have to be committed to learning some of the things as we go. As long as our plan has a general direction, as long as our plan has a way that we can assess if we are moving towards the right metrics, I think that's the level of the plan that we have to get to. And if I'm being totally honest, for most people, this is probably 60% of whatever plan you have. As soon as you get to 60%, it's just time to get things in motion, and we'll learn the other 40% on the road. That 60% is just to make sure that we've covered our bases and we're not going to make any silly mistakes along the way. I think the typical cycle that I've seen, especially when people overplan things, is that You will spend so much energy and so much time in the planning process, in the endless meetings, just to be discussing the same thing week after week after week. And then somebody goes on annual leave, and then when they come back from annual leave, we now have to catch them up. I think what you find is that people get so exhausted and so tired in that process that by the time you come to the community engagement, by the time you come to the policy changing, people have lost all energy for the work. And I think this is probably the key thing that happens in the health equity space, and probably one of the largest reasons why things in certain sectors haven't actually moved on in many years. It's because you have a group of people who have so much energy, and they will almost get their energy drained by the bureaucracy, by the establishments, by the research systems that they have to go through, that when it comes to actually putting the work into play, that they are completely exhausted, they are completely drained. All of the funds for the projects have completely gone simply because they wasted it all on doing the wrong things. So I'ma be real. If you want to be a person that takes health equity serious in 2024, it's time to start walking the walk. Like, the time for talking the talk is gone. I think the time for talking the talk was many years ago, but now it's time to walk the walk. We have an abundance of knowledge, and it's your job to make sure that knowledge is being transferred into progress, that knowledge is being transformed into actions that we can tangibly see on the ground. I would love to know what you think about how we can move health equity forward. I think at the moment we are doing so many things which are just making us go round and round in a circle. Now, don't get it twisted, this video is not me bashing anyone who's doing any work in the space. This video is more of a call to action to say there is certain things that we just keep going round and round in circles, and we need to get out of the loop for us to be able to move forwards. I think we all have a role to play in driving change, and don't get it twisted, this is not me saying that research is completely pointless. I think what we need to do is make sure that everybody plays their role to the best of their abilities. I think at the moment there is so many people who are playing their roles in research, so many people who are playing their roles as advocates, and there is not enough people who are actually in the arena doing the work. I think the issue that we're facing at the moment is people confuse things such as doing a research paper on the mortality rates of X condition, which was already put out last year, but just updating it with this year's figures, as doing the work. When I think if we look at how we can move the needle, that hasn't actually moved the needle. That's kind of just confirmed what we already knew. So this year, I hope that there is more unity, there is more collaboration, so that we can work together with the people who have already done that work to be like, you did the research last year, we know that the research this year is probably going to be exactly the same. So let's do something so that we can actually create results and evidence where that research isn't the same, or where we've moved the needle so we've gone from 4 times to 1 time more likely. So if you're a person who wants to be able to move the needle forwards, I urge you to be in the arena. I urge you to just take the ideas, go to the research papers, go to the recommendations, and just take something and action it and see where it takes you.